It's October, I'm in the mood to talk some horror movies, so today we're going to be looking at an article on the worst movies in the best horror franchises. It's reaction time. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comment section with each of these franchises that we look at. Let me know, what do you think is the worst movie in these franchises? These reaction time videos are streamed live over on my Patreon page. Likewise, these articles are submitted by my supporters over on Patreon. Quite literally, earlier today, I asked them to submit articles on horror movies, Halloween themed. This is one of the articles that people sent in, so this afternoon we're shooting a video, and now we got a main channel video all about it. But today, we will be looking at the worst movies in the greatest horror franchises. Let's get started. First off, first one on here, the Exorcist franchise, and their pick for the worst movie in one of the best franchises is The Exorcist 2: The Heretic. First off, I will say, I would debate the concept that this is one of the best horror franchises. Exorcist has one of the best movies. It has at least one good sequel. And then we got a lot of questionable stuff. Exorcist is not a great franchise. That's my objection here. Their pick is Exorcist 2: The Heretic is the worst movie in one of the greatest franchises. That is the correct answer. That is absolutely the correct answer on this one. That even just a little bit ago in one of those reaction time videos, I talked about franchises with the biggest drop-offs. Exorcist to Exorcist 2 is one wild franchise failure. And it's not even that they went cheapy, got a crappy director. They got the guy that did Deliverance to direct the movie, and they just had a terrible concept for a movie where, if there's great evil in the world, there must be great good in the world that can potentially, cure autism or something like that. And they're doing flashbacks, and there's locusts and people riding on bees. The director of The Exorcist has done some hilarious rants about how bad Exorcist 2 is.
So I went in the screening room and I see some guys riding on the back of a bumblebee or some fucking thing. It was unreal. And I left.
So this is a pretty easy one to go with. Next movie on the list, we are going with the Friday the 13th franchise, and they picked Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes a Boat to Vancouver. Not a bad pick. Not my pick for the worst movie in this franchise, but this is not a bad pick. That the idea of putting Jason Voorhees in Manhattan, great idea. And then they're like, yeah, let's not spend any money on this. So they set it on a boat, and then the part that's in Manhattan is actually shot almost entirely in Vancouver, which doesn't actually look that much like New York City. And then they did a few days of shooting just to get some here's Times Square and stuff like that. So it just utterly fails to deliver on what you want from the movie. But I just think that there's worse films that are even more misguided. I think Jason Goes to Hell is a worse movie because it's barely a Friday the 13th movie. The guy that made it openly admitted, I just love the Evil Dead movies, and so I tried to make my own Evil Dead movie with Friday the 13th. And so all of a sudden, there's a guy eating Jason's heart, and he turns into Jason, and Jason's aura switches bodies, and there's a magic dagger straight out of the Evil Dead films. I think there's even props from the Evil Dead movies in there. It's just trying to turn Friday the 13th into something completely different. And then likewise, Part 5, where the whole movie is about an imposter, and it all takes place because a guy dropped a candy bar or something like that, offered a candy bar and a guy freaked out. And they do like a Scooby-Doo ending of like, who is it? And it's just as ridiculous as a Scooby-Doo cartoon where it's like, it's that random guy that you met at the beginning. Like, what are we doing with this Friday the 13th movie? Like, this is a terrible idea for a film. So I think there's enough schlock value in Jason Takes Manhattan that I can have fun with it in a way that I just think that some of those other ones just are totally toast from the get-go. Today's video is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not closing the door when you use the bathroom. Even if you think you have nothing to hide, why give random creeps a chance to invade your privacy? So why do you need a VPN? Because all of your traffic flows through servers, internet service providers, including mobile network providers, and they know every single website that you visit. And in the US, ISPs are legally allowed to sell that information to advertisers. ExpressVPN reroutes 100% of your traffic through secure, encrypted servers so your ISP can't see your browsing history. So why is ExpressVPN the best VPN? It hides your IP address, making it extremely difficult for third parties to track your online activity. It's extremely easy to use. You just open the app, click one button, and you're protected. And it works on all devices, laptops, phones, tablets, and more. You can stay private on the go. I have been an ExpressVPN paying user for a while now. I travel a lot. ExpressVPN was the right cost, super easy to use, and it didn't slow down my browsing of the internet. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/Chandler. That's expressvpn.com/Chandler to find out how you can get your 4 extra months. expressvpn.com/Chandler. Next one on the list, the Omen franchise. Another one that I don't know that I would say that this is a great franchise so much as an iconic movie with other movies in it. Because I think the only like sequel that has been like, or follow-up that's been even a good continuation was the one that came out last year. But their pick for the worst movie in the Omen franchise, number 4, The Awakening, and this is the correct answer. And that even for the right answer, there is no bigger red flag than made-for-TV movie. Yeah, this one hurts. Exactly. This is a made-for-TV Omen movie. And this is a film that was like ahead of the curve on multiple fronts. It's a gender swap sequel, and it's like a soft reboot where it's basically the same plot as The Omen, except gender swapped with like a gimmick to make it a continuation of. There is a little bit of a clever twist, just a bit of it in the third act when you understand fully everything kind of going on. But otherwise, you're like trying to do an R-rated creepy horror movie as a movie of the week on like network television, which is a terrible idea for like such dark subject matter. And even worse, the score on this movie feels like it's for a family dramedy in the 90s, like with like quirky and whimsical. And there's like a part where like a kid is like climbing a ladder, afraid, being chased by this girl, and he starts peeing his pants, and there's like doot 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 doot, like this quirky music play. And it was like, oh my goodness, we went from the creepy, awesome score of The Omen to this crap. So another one where I'm like, I'm not quite sure I'd call this one of the greatest horror franchises, but this is the correct pick for the worst movie in this franchise. Moving right along to Child's Play. And they went with Child's Play 3 for their pick for the worst movie. And I personally would not go with Child's Play 3 as the worst in the franchise, though it is very low on my list. I think the worst in the franchise for me easily is Seed of Chucky. It takes the self-aware comedy of Bride of Chucky and pushes it so far and gets so weird with Glenn and their child that like it goes off in just the craziest, weirdest directions. It's so meta that it's just a bad comedy. It's not a horror movie at all. And so I think that movie is just a disaster of bad ideas and the worst excesses of the franchise. And it's literally the point of reference of some of the TV show or anything like that. Whenever it starts veering too much in the comedy direction, you go, Seed of Chucky. It's turning into Seed of Chucky again. Child's Play 3 would be the worst of the serious entries in the Child's Play Chucky franchise. That there's pretty clear distinction. You have serious horror Chucky, and you've got comedy Chucky. In terms of serious Chucky, Child's Play 3 just feels like, all right, it's played out. Like, we're doing a little bit too much with Andy, and now we're following him to military school, and it's played out. It's not good anymore. It doesn't work the same way that it used to when it's the kid once again. My childhood toy is back tormenting once again. Come on now. So and that's why I'm like Bride of Chucky, I think, is such a great course correction of like changing the flavor of it. And then they went too far in that direction with Seed, and then all the back and forth. It's a weird franchise. Then we have the Halloween franchise. Their pick is The Curse of Michael Myers. I'm absolutely not going with The Curse of Michael Myers, though that's not much better. I appreciate this about the list, is that in their list, they acknowledge that there's other ones that people typically will pick as the worst one. So for me, it's the one that they mentioned. They said it's a tough call. Which one do you go with? And I would go with the other one, which is Halloween Resurrection. And at best, it's an ill-conceived movie that feels, and I think there's a little bit of truth to this, that they took a generic, trendy horror script that was sitting there, retrofitted into a Halloween movie, and that literally is kind of what happened. The guy that wrote the screenplay for it had this idea independent of Halloween, and they went, let's just do like a reality TV show survival challenge at the Myers house as a Halloween movie, and then what if Michael showed up that day? Which I think it's like such a schlocky concept for an iconic franchise. And then adding to that, Busta Rhymes learns karate from martial arts movies. No! Beats up Michael Myers, electrocutes his balls to defeat him. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! And you're like, how is this happening in this movie? That's the movie at its best. But in addition to that, it's also a movie that retcons film, which is to say, Halloween H2O is one of my personal favorite Halloween movies as someone that is from the Kevin Williamson era of horror films. And I like movies that have payoff, that are, of that catharsis, the satisfaction of all the years of tension, and Laurie Strode finally fights back. I like that sort of thing. And that's what H2O was. They do a fight back movie. She finally beats Michael. And this movie not only undoes that, it then humiliates her, locks her in a loony bin, and has her defeated. I hate that. All so we can deliver the crappy movie that's pulled a random script off a shelf, retrofit it as a Michael Myers movie, and have Busta Rhymes electrocute his balls. Like, what are we doing? But Curse of Michael Myers also really low on my list. Like, it's there's two different versions of it with competing for which one has worst ideas. The producer's cut has certain things about it that are a little bit more cohesive. It also has the idea that Michael Myers raped his underage niece and is the father of her baby, which is like such. It's not bad enough that he's a killing machine. He's also now an incestuous pedophile rapist. Like, why would you throw this in there? And as bad as it is what they do in both versions to Jamie, Michael's the father. Oh, just gross. But this is an example of like a franchise that at its best is the simplicity of, for not really any reason, Michael is evil and he's just a force of nature out to do evil. Very simple, tension, suspense, payoff in the third act, done. The Thorn trilogy attempts to give reason for everything in this big lore and backstory, and it's like, no, come on, like all of that loses. So I have no problem throwing this one under the bus too. Coincidentally, I might actually be watching this movie tonight. I've been watching through the Halloween movies with my son the last 6 weeks or so, and this is the movie that we're on, so it's possible that we'll actually watch it tonight. Maybe it'll move up my list. Moving right along to one of my personal favorite franchises, as several of these are, the Scream franchise. Scream is my personal favorite horror film. As to what I just said above, the Kevin Williamson era of horror films was my formative years when I was in high school, 96 to 2000. That was the Kevin Williamson era. Scream came out in 96. I was a freshman in high school. That was like the horror franchise of my high school years. The only one I actually saw in the theater, though, was Scream 3. And I had the soundtrack for it. This is the correct pick. I think pretty easily in my mind, Scream 3 is the worst in the Scream franchise. All that said, compared to the garbage above, when you're talking about like worst Halloween movie, worst Exorcist movie, worst Friday the 13th, those franchises go off the rails and put out just generally bad, generic garbage that breaks the franchise. I think Scream 3 is easily the worst Halloween movie, or a Scream movie. But if that's your worst, we're doing pretty good. I don't like all the backstory with Sydney's mother and the Hollywood. And I think it gets too self-involved and Hollywood's in love with itself, so Hollywood makes a movie about Hollywood. I don't like all that stuff in it. And then the big twist with who the ghost face is. I don't really care for any of that because it is just, it's inside baseball for Hollywood people. Don't like it. Still, it's got that Scream fun to it. That it's just like the genre's fun. It's energetic. It's still kind of funny. There's like nice cameos in there. Like Carrie Fisher shows up as playing someone that is not herself but looks like herself intentionally. They're just like making fun of herself. Just there's a lot of very enjoyable stuff in here. I just don't like the direction they went with it, and there's a lot of trouble with the production. And it seems pretty clearly at some point in time they planned to have two ghost faces in the movie, and then they like changed it at some point in time. There were script changes, rewrites, all sorts of crazy sorts of things that kind of happened in there. So yeah, Scream 3 is the worst of the Scream movies, but it's still very watchable. I say this about this franchise as well as like the Evil Dead franchise. These are a couple of the most consistent horror franchises that if that's your low bar, you're doing great, and that's the Scream franchise. Moving right along, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street, and this one we are going with, they went with the remake. Once again, in it, they call out some of the more popular picks, and so they mention Freddy's Dead specifically in there. I personally am going to go with Freddy's Dead, but here's where I'm going to go real controversial with my take. I don't like, in the original run, I don't like any of the ones after Dream Warriors. I think that franchise real quickly lost me, and they all kind of, they got music video directors, and they just feel like music videos, and it's so bogged down in lore and dream children and just weird stuff. I don't like any of them after Dream Warriors. It's like, first one's great, Dream Warriors is great, and then there's three that I'm like, I don't like this, and then New Nightmare's interesting. But the remake, to me, I think it was pretty ill-conceived, and they got the calibration wrong, and they leaned too far into, like, this is how evil Freddy Krueger is in a gross way. But, like, I don't think the casting was wrong in who they got. I just don't think people wanted it at the time. And, you know, it's not very good, but I'd rather watch this one than 4 through 6. What it was my actual pick for the worst, it is Freddy's Dead, which completely turns the franchise into self-parody and takes the little bit of Freddy's funny and is kind of like has this disturbing sense of humor and makes little jokes, and it makes that his defining characteristic to the point that we're doing Wicked Witch of the West parodies. We're doing video game mode. And then it goes full-blown crazy and does crappy CGI. And even just like their attempts to explain the origins of his power and everything. I think all of that stuff is garbage, completely lost. Just loses the plot entirely. So Freddy's Dead, I think, is way worse than a bland remake or an ill-conceived remake. So, yeah, I'm totally Freddy's Dead on this one. Next up, we have the Saw franchise. They went with Saw 3D, the final chapter. I double-checked my notes, and in my notes, I also went with Saw 3D, the final chapter. And for me, one of the biggest, just dumbest choices in, well, it's a franchise where almost certainly if they realized that they were going to make a movie every year for 7 years straight, they would have done something different with Jigsaw. They would have not killed him off so soon. But they did kill him off way too soon. In which case, they make this brain-dead decision to make 4 movies about Hoffman. My understanding is that there's like Hoffman fans out there that think he's great. I think he is just such a boring character that is never shown to actually be all that smart, but constantly is evading capture, leading to 4 movies of him not getting caught and evading capture from people that are more clever than he is. And it leads us to the final chapter, which has all these plot lines that feel pretty disconnected. And they keep trying to have Jigsaw in through flashbacks. And one of the greatest de-aging techniques of all time. They trying to make Jigsaw look younger. So he shows up to the author, whoop, with his cap turned backwards.
Your name, sir? John.
How do you do, fellow kids?
Surprise! Who could it be? It's just a mess of a movie where they just had run out of ideas and just played out a storyline over too many films, so there was just no way for this thing to be satisfying at this point in time. There was just nothing fresh. So for me, I'm totally in agreement that this is the worst one. Another one using bad, crappy 3D gimmicks in it. So yeah, total agreement here. Then we have Hellraiser. They went with Hellraiser Revelations. And I'll say this. I think Revelations is a safe pick. And for reasons that they actually said in here. That it was made ultra low budget for like $300,000. So they're like, to keep the rights, we got to make a movie real quick. $300,000. And with something like Hellraiser, like it's so insulting to do that. And so it's like 40% found footage about people like going to Tijuana or something like that and discovering the box and Cenobites and everything like that. And it kind of returns. I don't have this one in last. And maybe even it is because the limitations made them go found footage. So I actually remember this one much better than a couple of the ones that came right before this. And that kind of matters to me. Like, they made a movie that actually had something that cuts through the noise of, there's so many direct-to-video Hellraiser movies. So, like, on my list, I actually had 6 and 7 lower. Those are the only 2, but 6 and 7 were lower. Number 6, I had at the bottom because it's in this middle of about 5 of these films that are just like generic police investigation movies. They're all kind of the same thing. It's like a corrupt cop that's kind of a jerk, gets wrapped up in an investigation. You don't know what's real or what's not. Here's what offended me about it, is that they brought back, was it Christie from the first 2? And spoiler alert, they kill her off at the beginning to just give a plot for this crappy movie, to give the lead to this crappy dude. And there's like, they have an explanation with the box and the purgatory and all this nonsense and everything, like tormenting the guy. But it's like the same twist that all of these movies have, that are the direct-to-video garbage ones. And then I also had Dead or Lower, because I literally forget its existence every single time. I was like, which one is deader? And I was trying to think, like, who's in it? What happened? I was like, a journalist investigate. Like, it just leaves no mark whatsoever. Like, there's nothing in it even to remember. And that's like 5 through 10 or something like that. They're just like the same exact plot. One of them has Henry Cavill, so it's memorable. One of them has Christy die, so it's memorable. One of them was done by Scott Derrickson, was the first one of these, so it's kind of memorable. And then there's like 2 of them that are like, what is this thing? I don't know. So I think those ones are worse. I think Revelations, it's an easy one to target, and it is really bad. It is very low budget and very cheap. But at least it does something different. All right, then we have Leprechaun Origins. I got to skip over this one because I have not seen Leprechaun Origins. I've seen the original run through like 2005. I had an apartment with some guys, and for St. Patrick's Day 2005, we did a Leprechaun-a-thon, and we just sat there and we watched Leprechaun 1, Leprechaun 2, Leprechaun 3, we're going to space, we're going to the hood, we're back to the hood. So however far that is, I did, but that was literally, it was literally 2005, so it was 20 years ago we did that. I tried to do a Leprechaun ranking for my channel, and I got to like the 3rd one, I was like, these are all garbage. There's nothing that I enjoy about these, and like we're in Las Vegas and stuff, and there's just nothing here that I can rank one over the other or anything like that, so I skipped over it, so I can't chime in on this one. And along those exact same lines, I haven't seen the VHS movies. Well, I haven't seen all the VHS movies. I've seen the 22, 23, and 24 releases. I would have seen Halloween, but it was playing at the same time as another movie at Fantastic Fest this year that The Best Man from My Wedding was in. It's actually the mystery movie that I didn't want to say the title of it because we don't use that kind of language on my channel. I don't really would endorse the film, but I had to support it for my friend because he was in it and had like stars in a section of it. But the VHS movies make me sick. They literally make me nauseous from the shaky cam and it's a series of shorts. So maybe I've only seen them at midnight screenings after watching 4 movies. It's like the 4th movie out of 4 movies or 5th movie out of 5 movies while eating junk food at a Alamo Draft House, like greasy pizza and stuff like that. So diet conditions made me sick or whatever, but I've not enjoyed any of these movies, and so I haven't gone back to watch the original run of them either. Then they have the Phantasm franchise here. This is actually a fun little detail on this one. Just fun little anecdote to throw in right here. Fantastic Fest last week. I'm there with Cody Leach. He's literally stayed at my house for the whole deal. And he puts on he's just wearing a shirt for Phantasm. Just throws on one of his shirts. Most all of his shirts are novelty horror shirts. He's wearing a Phantasm shirt. And we walk in, there's a nightclub at the movie theater where you can hang out. And the creator of the franchise, Dawn, is doing a live podcast. He just walks in, he's on stage, that's cool. And so then the podcast says, Dawn gets off stage, walks to the back of the room, and Cody's standing there wearing the Phantasm shirt. And like, just have a conversation. Like, and totally coincidentally, Cody wears this shirt. He does not know that the creator of the franchise is going to be there. He just happens to be there. And so he's able to have a conversation with them. And then Dawn just stuck around the next couple of days. So Cody talked to him the next day at the after party. He was walking around, talked to him again. It was really cool. Just a little anecdote to throw in there on this one. Their pick for the worst of the Phantasm franchise was Ravager. And I got to agree with that one. That, you feel kind of bad picking that one because it was like a long delayed, ultra low budget sequel that it was like made or shot over multiple years. I think it was like a sci-fi original movie. And so it's like the kind of thing where there was something they wanted to do, but never really got the budget to really pull it off. And so the film feels like that. Like a bunch of big, ambitious ideas cheaply executed. And so the franchise ends up ending on kind of a whimper. And it was, coming like 18 years after the previous movie. So it's 18 years later, the franchise returns to something really disappointing. So I've only seen it one time, so I can't get too much into specifics on it. And I watched it I don't know, 5 years back, because it was a franchise I'd never seen, and Cody recommended I check it out. So I gave it a watch, so I have a ranking of it on my channel if you want my more specific thoughts on it, but I would agree with this one, and a lot of it is simply just the budget wasn't there, too much time had passed. They're like, these guys were very old, so I think even wasn't that the tall man or whatever had like died by the time that this came out. Like, it was that level of how much time had passed that literally people were dying during the production of it. Final franchise on the list, they went with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. They picked Leatherface as the worst movie in the franchise, and I will agree. I will completely agree with this one. This is such an ill-conceived concept for a movie, where there's quite a few pretty bad Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies that just kind of rehash the same thing or whatever, or have kind of a weird tone or concept to them. Sometimes you have Alexandra Daddario throwing a chainsaw to her cousin, being like, "Do your thing, cuz," and all of a sudden we're doing anti-hero Leatherface. I don't think anything is ill-conceived as doing a prequel explaining why Leatherface is Leatherface. And not everybody needs a tragic backstory of how they became the way that they are. Just don't need to do that for everyone. And so that's what this film is. Just from concept to execution, a really, really bad idea. And it doesn't fit in with the franchise stylistically. It doesn't fit in chronologically. It doesn't really make any sense or anything like that. And you don't watch this movie and go like, "Oh wow, this feels like it fits so perfectly. It helps me understand the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre so much better." You watch it like, what? This is ridiculous. So completely agree. This is an atrocious concept for a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. Like, easily agree with this one. So with this list, of these lists I've reacted to, this is probably the one that like I'm closest to, like, yeah, that was good. There's a couple places where I disagreed, but even some of those, maybe I had the hot take on it. Or when they didn't have Freddy's Dead as the worst, they're like, hey, a lot of people would say Freddy's Dead, but I'd say this one. Anytime someone acknowledges that they've got a bit of the hot take, I respect the hot take and I respect the acknowledgement. So I liked this list. This was a good list that they, like, nothing in there there wasn't too much, like, that I even disagreed with all that much. Even some of the ones where it's like, which one would I pick? Hey, we're picking the crap, which is the better crap here. So good list. This was a solid article and a fun kickoff to talking horror movies in the month of October. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching on the recast on the main channel, if you're interested in these types of videos, consider joining on Patreon. Link down below in the description. And keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.